And we're live.
Hello. La, la, la.
Jen,
Hello,
you're very black.
I am very well. It's shut it down for Palestine, so I'm wearing my Not in Our Name, Jewish Voice for Peace shirt. But yeah, there's been a lot of actions all over the place. I am feeling very black. I do feel very dark.
Yeah,
it's a very dark situation. Like I cannot it's not just sort of like this going away thing. It's really not. I feel like this very dark thing is hovering over.
So there's a lot of places that we could start tonight. And remember to smash that like button, do all the wonderful things we ask you to do every time. Chris, great to see you. Teresa, Schultz, you guys are great. Travers is here early. Good to see you, pal. So, all right. So here's the deal, guys. Colin, if you could grab the clip, it's all over Twitter right now. So Florida State House Representative Angie Nixon was giving a speech on the House floor today talking about how many dead Palestinian children is enough. Because what a lot of you may not know, and this is where our scummy governor and all the wonderful things that come with him come into play, Florida is one of the big weapons manufacturers for the state of Israel. So a lot of the stuff that's going over there to kill these Palestinians is being done here. Oh, and by the way, for those of you who think that this war is against Hamas, I can tell you right now that statistical data across almost every reputable news outlet, anything that you could possibly think of, have all said and told that over 90% of the people killed are civilians. So never doubt what the intentions are. This is an ethnic cleansing, and that's what's happening. So Angie Nixon, who is a real firebrand in her own right, was on the floor today saying how many dead Palestinian children is enough. Well, according to the very first state house representative in the state of Florida representing Pensacola, Michelle Salzman says all of them. And in a way, I'm glad that she said it because that is what a lot of people are thinking. And the way that they're acting would suggest that that is how they feel. There is no limit to how many people they are willing to kill. And why would they? So I think it's important that, we recognize just how vital this can be, because it is pretty bad. I'm going to present this. Colin, I don't see this. Oh, okay. Never mind. I'm sorry. So this is important. I want you guys to all listen very carefully because it's very faint. But here's Angie Nixon talking earlier today.
We are at 10,000 dead Palestinians. How many will be enough? One of my colleagues just said all of them. Wow. One of my colleagues said all of them. One of my colleagues also stated that this is going to dry up their fundraising if we vote on this resolution. I also want that, that's what we've become in this state. That's what we've become in this state, where we don't care about innocent babies that don't even get the opportunity to blow out their first birthday candle.
And like the true coward that she is, she decided to privatize every single one of her social media channels. So if you would, Jen, please pull up her phone number because we're going to let you know what it is. Oh. And feel free to give her a ring because this person, if you want to talk about somebody who needs to be censured, and we will be talking about that, as you know. Yes.
Let me see if I can figure out how we could get that information. I don't think you can. You could call the state. I don't know how to do that. But I'm just sitting here trying to look up a little bit about her to see why is this woman a psycho? What is the deal with that?
I mean, I can't even assume that the lady is a Jew, even though Salzman you would think is a fairly Jewish name.
I want to see. Well, she's from Texas.
But this, I think, is just reflective of the very big problem that we're seeing right now, which is there are a lot of bloodthirsty, genocidal maniacs in elected office. And this person is certainly no exception. She really is not hiding it. And why would they? You have the president of the United States who came out today.
She's an Army veteran.
Yeah. Well, okay.
I'm just saying.
So
You know,
she's
not
served?
that. Well, yeah, not that is anything. I'm just saying in terms of, yeah, she's not. Yeah.
But total lack of humanity.
Clearly.
And unfortunately, this is probably a sentiment that is shared.
But
by
I
a lot
will
of
say
people.
her campaign slogan is the people's conservative. So
I don't
you
know
know.
if that would, I'm not really sure how that's even relevant.
I just think it's interesting.
She looks exactly as you would expect her to
Yeah.
look.
She kind of reminds me of like a younger Michelle Bachmann, actually.
The crazy eyes.
Kind of, yeah.
All right. So can we?
Yeah.
Well, any thoughts?
On that this is a crazy person that wants to that doesn't care how many Palestinians are dead. No, I don't have thoughts on that. I'm just, you know, like this is just going to be days and weeks just going forward, just looking at people over and over saying psychotic things and sane people trying to speak truth to that. That's basically all and we're going to see that in multiple formats.
But don't worry, Deborah Messing is out there on the Upper West Side of New York City, letting you know just how persecuted her people are and how badly they're being taken advantage of.
Good grief.
The total lack of self-awareness
Oh,
on so many people.
it's the caucasity.
Yeah. And so when everyone gets upset, particularly comfortable white America, when they wonder why, how come, you know, blacks don't like us or, you know, don't trust, it's like, well, do you really have to wonder why? You're basically saying that people of a certain makeup are just lesser than. We'll get to Wasserman Schultz later, but this is
the whole thing. It just
like you all have to understand that the whole point of censuring Rashida Tlaib is because they don't want to hear anything.
I'm so angry about that.
They don't want to hear anything. They don't want to talk. They want to pretend like this isn't happening, because the truth is, as I said, from the moment this happened, the first show we did, the moment that Hamas attacked the Israeli people at the festival and a few other places, I said, oh, this is their opening. This is their opening, and they are going to take it for all it's worth. They will go full force into eradication of Gaza if they can get away.
Well, I mean, manufacturing consent is just part of the thing. But the people of Michigan, people of Rashida Tlaib's district, you need to be outraged, just completely outraged. And you should definitely take that out in terms of your voting. But more than that, this is so offensive to me that they voted. First of all, the free speech aspect, the fact that you're censuring an elected representative for speech. And again, I don't care what her speech is. I don't happen to care whether I agree with it or don't agree with it. I don't even care if it's remotely hateful. I really don't. It's just speech. It's speech. We don't censure, like the idea that we're censuring for speech instead of things like, I don't know, insider trading, bribery.
No.
Right. Like those things. We're going to censure for speech. So let's just put that aside. Okay. Like that's the main thing like I have is the speech issue. But people, how are we not enraged that we are sitting through a genocide? Our country, the people in this country are at an economic, Jordan calls it the economic Hunger Games. Like we're living in a climate apocalypse.
Haven't you heard the economy's doing great?
Like all these things coming around us. And our Congress people, and I don't mean one of them or just a few of them, but a chunk of them are spending their time, our time. Those are our employees. They are spending our time censuring each other. They're all running around censuring each other with this political theater, and people are dying. And they take some moral high ground in either direction, like we give a shit. Anybody who supports this kind of theater and nonsense, I don't care if you're like, this is absurd. This is what we're paying them to do. This is what they make $180,000 a year for, is to sit there and just like
174.
174. Sorry. I mean, but you know, who knows what their benefits are. And
well, that's a whole other story.
But like, you know, this is just ridiculous that this is how they're spending their time. Is censure. I'm going to censure you. No, I'm going to censure you. No, I'm going to impeach him. This is really how they're spending their time.
Well, this is just another form of high school.
It's
That's all that it becomes.
Ridiculous. But that and the just inherent problem with that they're censuring her for speech. And by the way, the fact that they're so authoritatively saying from the river to the sea means the genocide of the Jews.
Why are they saying that?
Why are they saying from the river to the sea means that?
No, yeah, exactly.
Well, because, okay, first of all, that phrase has been around for, my understanding is since the 60s. It's been used in various contexts. And for the most part, it is used as a anthem of freedom for the Palestinian people between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea, that chunk of land, which, is Palestine. And what they want is freedom. So from the Sea of Jordan, right, from the river or from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, Palestine will be free. Now, the fact that Jews would translate the freedom of another group into, well, they must want to annihilate all of us. That is way more a projection of your genocidal thoughts and tendencies than it is about the people that are wanting freedom. However, I will say there have been people in the past that have said it in reference to annihilating Israel and, wiping Israel off the map. Now, whether they mean that figuratively or literally, I don't know. But just because some people used a phrase in that manner doesn't mean that somehow no one else can use it without meaning the exact same thing. And the fact that I just can't believe she was censured for this. I just cannot, but this is the whole thing. And what was the one with Moskowitz wanting to censure her for not accepting the State Department talking points? They are just spending all their time going after each other. That's what AIPAC has them doing. Your AIPAC has your congresspeople on little leashes running around sicking after each other, just trying to keep their narratives, like plugging holes on a sinking ship.
It reminds me of a story from a couple of years ago when there was it's probably about 2 years ago, or maybe a year and a half ago, something in that range. Actually, I think it was last summer, if I remember correctly. It was whatever the Pride event was. It was not this June, but the previous June.
Two Prides ago with Debbie.
Yeah. So there was a horrible accident.
It was an incident.
When some people thought it was a terror attack, but there was a member of the LGBTQ Pride parade who was one of the drivers who was literally inebriated beyond comprehension. Lost control of the truck and ran over I think multiple people, and one of the people that got ran over ended up getting killed. And the way that it was portrayed in the media was specifically at the behest of Wasserman Schultz, because it just so happens that this truck was very close to her float that she was on, and she actually thought that somebody was trying to kill her.
Right. She actually thought it was about her. So first of all, stepping aside from the complete narcissism of that, like you're in a pride parade, there's a car coming sort of out of control and swerving into people. And your first instinct is it's about you, but not just that it's about you, but that somebody's trying to kill you. It's like, she at least has the self-awareness that she's very disliked, okay? Because if your first thought is, I'm at a parade, there's a car accident, it must be someone trying to kill me, you have at least the awareness that people don't like you. So I almost kind of want to give her props for that. But the level of just narcissism that it's about her. But no, it turns out that in fact, it was not an assassination attempt against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and it was not a terrorist attack. It was but a drunk driver and a horrible accident. But yeah. Her first thought was somebody's trying to kill me.
We have seen time and again that the elected representatives of our country do not represent us. They represent their corporate special interests. It is no more obvious than with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who is our representative, and has taken the third most amount of money in all of the Democratic House. I don't believe it's the entire House. I have to check that. But the idea that you're a congresswoman representing one House district out of 435, and you've taken over $600,000 from AIPAC alone. That's not even including ADL. That's not even including DMFI. I mean, that's pretty sick. And the only people that have taken one is obvious. The one person who's ahead of her is Josh Gottheimer, who is a Republican. I mean, let's be honest, that's what he is. He represents a very affluent district in North Jersey, just outside Manhattan, New York City. And another gentleman, I think his first name's Brad Schneider, and he represents an affluent area just outside of Chicago. So she's
in good company. And of course, I saw Moskowitz was, of course, on the list.
Sure. But he hasn't been around long enough to accumulate as much money.
But he's working his way fast.
Correct.
He's gonna milk that job for all it's worth before somebody gets him out of there.
There was a great photo on the steps of Capitol today. Colin, if you can find it, it's a picture of the 13 or 14 House members that were holding up the sign with Rashida saying ceasefire now. There's
the fact that there's that few of them is
it's terrible. Ro Khanna looking at you, buddy.
I'm looking at so many. Like, honestly, this is not going to age well if you are not on that side. It's just not going to.
No, and hats off to Barbara Lee, who is running for the U.S. Senate and is especially in California, where there are very affluent Jewish communities.
Yes.
And a number of them probably are not going to think very highly of her doing this. But you know what? If it's a political calculation, so be it. The majority of the affluent Jewish vote in the state of California will go to Adam Schiff. And so from Barbara's perspective, maybe this is just doing the right thing with a certain degree of political convenience attached to it. But whatever it is, at least she is doing it. And at least there are others that are out there that are saying we must have a ceasefire now.
They're all like, I feel like all of these people are like one step forward, two steps back. So like she does something like this. But then it wasn't that long ago that she was sort of like defending the Clinton Foundation. So it's just kind of frustrating. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I feel like nobody can just have their morals straight.
Max is resetting his internet. He'll be here shortly. So
okay.
We need you guys to understand that part of the reason that this is happening, Rashida gets censored, and she gets censored by, I think the vote's like 221, I want to say.
It's all Republicans and 22 Democrats.
Which means that you needed at least 7 or 8 Democrats.
No, there's a handful of Republicans that voted against it because Thomas Massie
and of course, Thomas Massie, who I've maintained is the best Republican in all of Congress.
I think it's like a little bit of a fan thing.
I like him because I like that he's principled. He's one of the very few people who isn't bought by the system and actually votes the right way on a number of key issues. Now, of course, he votes the wrong way on other ones.
The majority, all but like a handful of Republicans and 22 Democrats. There are, I'm happy to say that it is not all the Jews.
Correct.
There are some that did not participate in that, but they're not being loud enough on,
But just remember, because of that, you needed at least a dozen Democrats to cross the aisle and vote to censure this woman. And whether anybody wants to admit it or not, bless you, there is no question that the two biggest culprits that were out there ensuring that this was done was Josh Gottheimer and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. There is no doubt whatsoever, and there shouldn't be by anybody's account, because we know that they are front and center on this issue. Now, why are they front and center on this issue?
Now, could it be? I mean, look, I think you can't deny the link to over 600 grand from AIPAC and whatever. Like, you can't deny the link to the influence in that. But I also think that there is a psychotic belief in what it is to some extent. I don't know how much with Debbie is she genuinely believes in the ethno state to the extent that it's okay with her to ethno cleanse. I don't know that. I don't know that she believes that, or she just doesn't care and AIPAC
I don't think she doesn't care. I don't think she cares, and I think she gleefully takes the money.
Well, that's what no, but she very well could also be a Zionist. I don't know. I don't know whether
I think Debbie's a Zionist.
Well, again, I don't know what her personal position is. But she definitely takes a ton of money.
I'm going to prove a point, and I'm going to prove to you why she is a Zionist. Colin, grab that clip from CNN where Debbie was interviewed on the Capitol steps. I want to say it was like yesterday or today, where she...
Where's Maxwell?
He's not there.
Clearly.
So there's another one. Sheila's not there. there's a lot of people who are not there. Now, granted,
well, Sheila's not in that group, though.
She may not necessarily not support a ceasefire. This may have been who they were able to get
in a picture at that moment.
Yeah.
That's true,
so
too.
That's, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. But for the people who signed on to censure Tlaib, those are the people that you leave no doubt whatsoever where they stand.
Yeah.
They are very clear.
Those 22 Democrats, that needs to be made into a poster and circulating around throughout the entire campaign season, so that anybody in those, like, these people are just not, they're just not with the democracy. And
look, there are people on that list who have taken $20,000 from AIPAC. I mean, that's still a lot of money.
It isn't about that. They just censured an elected representative for speech.
Yeah.
That I don't care what she was saying.
Wasserman Schultz,
oh my God,
effectively said that if you don't sign on to my pro-Israel bill, you don't have a soul. Those are the exact words that she used, and you'll see it. You'll see that those are the words that Debbie decided was necessary to look. The dividing lines have been set. It is crystal clear what they're doing. They have no qualms about what they're doing. And the biggest thing you can say about what Debbie's, Zionist brigade is doing right now, which is really the big problem here, they don't care if somebody like Rashida Tlaib gets killed. They don't care if she's put in harm's way.
No. Well, no, they don't. No, they don't. But as long as it doesn't come back on them in any way. It's the most infuriating thing to me is that the world is falling apart and our elected people are wasting their time censuring each other like that. And it's just so stupid. It's so, like, this is one of the, like, somebody needs to be the grown-up in the room with these people. What are we watching? What are we watching?
You'll see.
Okay. I don't think I want to see this.
Behind the scenes, one of which was a comment that was made by Congressman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She is a prominent Jewish Democrat. She was pushing for a resolution that was adopted on a bipartisan basis on the House floor just a couple of weeks ago to reaffirm support for the United States for its war against Israel. I asked her about that resolution and about Democrats who may vote against it, and she had some sharp remarks about those Democrats, which set off an uproar.
There's this vote that's going to happen on the Israel-Hamas resolution on the floor. Are you concerned that some Democrats may not support this?
I would hope that all members would support a resolution that condemns terrorism, the brutal attacks that were perpetrated against the Israeli people that were killed. We have 218 hostages. They took 222. Someone who votes against this, I would think, doesn't have a soul.
And that comment sort of prompted outrage among key Democrats, and particularly the 15 who voted against that measure. Some of them, all of them minorities, some of them Muslim Americans, and some of them bringing this directly to the Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries, who has sought to tamp down
like
tensions internally, tried to get his members on the same page as this divide has been growing. We're told that one of the members even talked to W. Wasserman Schultz and was concerned that that is a racial trope that would be used, calling someone soulless, something that could be interpreted very negatively among African-American members in particular. Wasserman Schultz, we were told, indicated she was not aware of that in which she made that comment here. But Dana, all showing the divide that is just persisting as this war carries on, the debate within the Democratic Party that is now spilling out into public view, but very much a private debate as well.
And she's just such a piece of work. But I will say this. If there is anything that I believe that she actually is an expert on, it's on the soulless. If there is anybody who is an expert on not having a soul, it's her. So I actually, that's something she is an authority on. So it's interesting that she would say that. And the people on that list, so it's 15 people.
So it's basically everybody that you saw that was holding up the sign.
Right. Well, it's the same people that voted against that ridiculous blood oath to Israel.
Well, I will tell you, one of the people who was on that list, who wasn't on that holding the banner, was Maxwell Frost.
Right. No, I know. He was one of the people that signed the "I won't sign my blood oath to Israel."
So I think
they have no soul.
Well, but here's the thing. This is the great thing about Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Do you really want to sign a blood oath to Israel if the spokesperson is that little troll? Because that's what it is.
And I love the fact that they have to point out that she's a prominent Jewish like representative.
First
oh my
of
God,
all,
I
two
cannot
things.
stand
This is like somebody said, it's like anything. Who gives a damn if she's Jewish? Who gives a damn if you think she's prominent? How about just the congressional representative from South Florida representing the greater Fort Lauderdale area?
They can't do that.
Can't do that.
No.
Why not? Because it's a trigger point. You have to be able to, it's all about divide and conquer. See, the whole point of what corporate media is clicks, like anything else. If this is going to get you clicks, great. Now, we only played this clip because we want you to see the type of blood oath that Wasserman Schultz took from AIPAC. It's pretty serious. So never doubt that corporate special interests, especially the likes of pro-Israel corporate money, is willing to go, and she is ready, willing, and able to throw her own party under the bus because, let's be honest, AIPAC, that is a Republican right-wing organization.
Well, it's pretty equal. It's pretty equal. There's Zionists across both parties.
There are.
But the suggestion that somehow Hakeem Jeffries would help with that, like that would somehow take a position on that. If he is not also one of AIPAC's bitches, I don't know who is.
Well, Richie Torres would have something to say about that because, of course, he's one of the biggest too. I stand with Rashida Tlaib because I actually stand for free speech. And you can say whatever the hell you want. And you don't have to like it. And you know what? Just because you're Jewish doesn't make you better than somebody else, despite what Wasserman Schultz would have you believe.
Well, you know, it's like I said, I mean, and please, you know, and I think more and more people are realizing that it's interesting. This whole sort of uprising now is actually facilitating the understanding of more and more people as the difference between Judaism and Zionism. And that's because, and I am very proud to say that groups like Jewish Voice for Peace, which is an organization that I belong to, and If Not Now, and a bunch of groups have been being very, very visible and vocal. And so as a result, a lot of people are seeing that Jewish people and Zionists are not the same. And for that, I am appreciative that that is actually happening.
And it just so happens that our esteemed guest, who is a regular and somebody we appreciate very, very much, also happened to have been in Washington, D.C. during the Free Palestine mega rally. It was really incredible, tremendous rally.
It was insanely cool.
Yes, it was. And of course, you know him from the Real News. He is the one and only Max Alvarez. Welcome back to Generational Change.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks so much for having me. Sorry. I hope the internet holds up here in Baltimore because I had to reset my internet like 3 times to get on here. So
all right. Well, we'll take whatever we can get. I know that like at some point, I think some people like us were delusional that maybe we could actually connect with people at that event on Saturday. And there were a handful of different people that I had sort of wanted to connect with, and I just gave up. Plus, I wasn't getting reception. I wasn't getting signal. I couldn't connect with anybody. Like, it was just, and I'm happy that that was so different. Like, I'm happy for that problem. But yeah, I mean, what were your thoughts? You got I was close, and then I had to back up because it was just too congested. So I ended up backing up to where it was a little bit more spread out.
Yeah, it was really intense. I guess to like give folks like my sort of behind the scenes side of things, it was a very like Real News kind of affair because my old colleague Jessel Noor, who reported at the Real News for 10 years, he's an institution, phenomenal journalist, but he moved on to bigger and better things about a year ago. But I could tell he misses being on the ground, and so I was like, hey, do you want to come with me to DC on Saturday and like shoot with me? Because I can't go with anyone else, and I don't know how to shoot myself. So we went down on the train together from Baltimore, and we get off and we bump into Chris Hedges, and we're like, okay, let's use the buddy system. The Real News team is we're gonna walk our way to.
Yeah, well, I was gonna try to connect it. You're like, we're walking over with Chris Hedges, and I'm like, cool, I'd like to meet him, and then that was just done.
Well, it's funny too, because like I only recognized him because he had his like Harvard Divinity School hat on, but I noticed the grumpy sour face underneath it, and I was like, hey, that's our boy Chris. so we were just walking to Freedom Plaza, and like we do in the studio, and whenever Chris is there and in between interviews, he just comes up and we start talking about literature and philosophy, or we talk shit and play chess. Like, I don't know if this is like a war correspondent thing that you develop just to sort of like have chatter between being shelled and like, you know, like reporting on horrible stuff.
Yeah.
But it's really fun to talk to Chris about, you know, just anything and everything. And so he and I were talking about John Locke and freedom on our way to this march, and then bam, there it is, over 100,000 people just amassed in Freedom Plaza. And I mean, I had big expectations, but you know, I don't know if I've been in the midst of a gathering that large before, now that I think about it. I mean, I've definitely been part of large gatherings, but that was really massive. And so I guess where I'm getting to though is we were like, okay, everyone form a line, because we need to get to the press tent that's at the very front over by the stage. So we gotta snake our way.
How did you do that? Okay, therein was the issue.
Yeah, so like I still don't quite know, and I don't know how we didn't lose anybody, because it was me, Jessel behind me, and Chris behind him, and we were just snaking our way through this sea of people, and somehow didn't lose anybody, and we eventually made it to the press tent, where I met Walter, who I'd coordinated with before, so I could do some interviews with some of the speakers, and then Chris starts talking to Majia Benjamin, and we're like, okay, we'll see you back at the studio. And then we kind of went our separate ways. But I was like you, Jen, like I started doing some of the interviews, and if folks want to watch, because Lord knows that a lot of corporate media have either initially ignored, downplayed, or tried to misconstrue the tenor of the march itself. We shouldn't be surprised, but you know, I think that if folks really want to just see what it was like on the ground and hear from people who attended, that's what we published at The Real News. The full report went up yesterday. It's 30 minutes where I was just kind of doing man on the street interviews with folks. And it was really beautiful and powerful, and hearing what they had to say. But like you, Jen, I started doing some of those interviews right next to the stage with I got to interview Yara Shafani from the Palestinian Youth Movement. It was great.
Those kids are amazing.
They're really on it. And so I got some interviews there, but then I was like, I need to get out of here because I'm going to have a panic attack. Like I'm just surrounded by all sides. And the funny thing is if you watch the interview that I did with Yara, Jessel had to point this out to me, but apparently Macklemore was just standing right next to us, like looking in on the interview. I had no idea. It was a wild scene. But it was, I think it was not one thing in the sense that there were obviously, you know, brilliant speakers on stage representing kind of different parts of the movement. Those speakers were picked for certain reasons, and like the message was very and needed to be very strong that what we are watching happening is a genocidal assault on Palestinians, an effort to completely eradicate Palestinians from the Gaza Strip after keeping them in a open-air concentration camp for 2 decades at this point. But as Chris Hedges himself said on Mark Snyder's show at the Real News Network in an interview we published this week, I mean, the end result is clear as day. They want to just complete the job. They want to get rid of everyone Palestinian who's there, right? And just take the land. And that has been the slow process that has been in play for 75 years. And so the people who came to that march I noticed there weren't a lot. I mean, there were a lot of people who know about this struggle, who haven't been blinded by the corporate propaganda for, you know, decades, people who knew about the history of Israel, Palestine, and so on and so forth. But I think there were also a lot of people who didn't. And I think those are the people who are coming to us, and I imagine coming to you guys. But we've been getting a flood of folks coming to the Real News, even my parents. Like my parents have been calling and saying like, hey, like I'm fed up. And remember, I was raised very conservative. My parents, like myself, we've all made our different political journeys, but you know, I've had so many people like my parents come and say like, I can't stand to watch the news anymore because it's so obvious that they are pushing one side and one narrative that I feel like I'm being talked down to. I feel like I'm being manipulated, and it offends that necessary sensibility that as human agents, you know, like independent thought that I think all of us have. And it's just really wild to watch this from the from the outside now, because having grown up super conservative, having grown up first gen Mexican American, American dream believer, after 9/11, I was not the enlightened leftist scholar that you see before you today. And I'm saying that tongue in cheek. I mean, like, I bought into it hook, line, and sinker. I was in high school, for Christ's sake. I didn't know shit my ass from the hole in the ground, right? So I was just taking whatever the media was giving me. I was taking whatever sort of like assumed positions that I had grown up with about America, our place in the world, the Middle East, geopolitics. Like, I had such a rudimentary understanding, and I was so heartbroken by the chaos that I saw on 9/11, the loss of life, the devastation, that I too wanted vengeance, and I too bought into the fervor that led to people like Chris Hedges, who is now my colleague, to get fired from the New York Times for speaking out about it. The world works in very fucking mysterious ways. I guess the long rambly point that I'm getting to is what I really was impressed by on Saturday at the Free Palestine March on Washington, which was the largest, as you guys have said, the largest pro-Palestine march in the United States history, is that it made space for all kinds of people who are coming to this understanding, right? I mean, people who really do feel betrayed by how misled we have been by our politicians and by our media, because to realize after so many decades that you have been sympathizing with, I want to be careful here, because as we've tried to say on The Real News, like, our position is that we value life. We value human life, right? And we fight for human life wherever it exists. And so, of course, we are going to feel, our hearts are going to bleed for the people who were killed in Israel on October 7th. But I also talked to Mark Steiner about this, because I was like, I'm here as an American trying to figure out how to feel about this when I don't want those people to die. I feel horrible about it. I can feel and understand why anyone in Israel feels the way that they do. At the same time, I can feel and understand why anyone in Palestine feels the way that they do when they've been put in this position, when their land has been stolen, their people have been killed, they've been dispossessed, they've been pushed out of their land, families have been broken apart. Like, it's just been an onslaught of horror for 75 years. And for so many people to have lived their lives without really understanding that, to now finally realize it in 2023, it's a real big shock to the system. And I think that we, as people who want to bring as many people as we can into this movement to fight for life, to fight against the extermination of life, the dispossession, and just the wholesale mistreatment of our fellow human beings in this manner, people who want to stop that. We have to make room and space for people who are making those journeys. We don't want to coddle anybody, because everyone has to take their own responsibility for the things they chose not to see, the things they chose not to look into more deeply. But again, most people are people living their lives who don't have time. And in the United States of America, in the heart of empire, we are afforded the luxury of not having to give that much of a shit about the rest of the world, only insofar as we are told that we and our military are out there spreading freedom and democracy to it, so on and so forth. But we mainly just live our lives. People are trying to get by. Not a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking about this stuff, because they don't have to. We're not over there unless, like, we have family that are connected to it, and so on and so forth. And so I was really moved to see, and we tried to cover in The Real News, that there are people who are just Palestinian Americans who were born in refugee camps, who now live here and have been fighting for this and never thought that the fight would end their whole lives. They're also, the one that broke my heart was, I interviewed a ninth grader, a Palestinian American ninth grader, who wanted to go on camera. Like, he kind of tugged on our shirts and was just like, "Are you guys with the news?" And we were like, "Yeah." So I talked to his dad. I asked him if it was okay. I told him like how it was going to go. And he believed in his son. He was like, "Whatever you have to say, go for it." And the kid just, he just looked in the camera and he was like, "I've seen everything. I've seen all the videos. I can't unsee it now. There's no limit to what I can't see. So what else am I supposed to do? how am I supposed to grow up and just be a kid when I am watching literally kids who look exactly like me, who are my age, being ripped in half on the internet, like having their heads blown off, buried under rubble? Like, that's the moral crisis that we are all in right now. This is not, this really gets to the heart of who we are as human beings and who we want to be as a human race for however much longer we have on this fucking planet that we are helping to destroy.
Right. Well, that's questionable.
Right.
How much longer we have is very questionable.
Well, and that's why I say it comes down to this, because for as difficult as the situation on the ground is, as hard-nosed as Netanyahu and Israel clearly are, as bewilderingly unforgivably complicit as the United States and Joe Biden are in this slaughter, the longer this goes on, the less likely any kind of like real non-genocidal solution is going to happen, right? And so again, faced with that kind of crisis of humanity, we have a question to ask ourselves, right? Is whatever future we as humans are going to have be worth living in if we have proven to ourselves that we are capable of standing by while this happens, while we do this to one another? What world are we even leaving to our children when this is the status quo, when this is acceptable, when this is the thing that, instead of everyone in Congress saying stop this madness, they're censoring Rashida Tlaib. They're like, they won't even speak out on a ceasefire, even though the majority of Americans support it. So like, this is literally a fight for our souls at this point, as much, but it is first and foremost a fight for the people who are still alive under that rubble, still alive in Gaza, but who will not be for much longer. With each passing day, more bodies get piled up. And now Israel's saying that, and Biden said it, that we all heard the quote, no ceasefire, no chance whatsoever. Instead, we're getting these 4-hour humanitarian pauses, when all that is it's just opening up the bathtub drain. It is just saying, we're going to bomb the shit out of you, and then we're going to open up the drain so more of you can get out, and get out now. Otherwise, you're either going to die or you're going to be running in the next humanitarian pause, because we are not trying to save hostages. We are not trying to find a peaceful solution. We are trying to mow the lawn and get rid of everyone and turn Gaza into a moonscape. And that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I'm sick of hearing from anybody about the hostages. I don't want to hear about the hostages. Israel has no care about the hostages. I actually feel horrible about the hostages, but for all we know, they've already been bombed in one of the millions of buildings that have already been bombed completely indiscriminately. So if they were concerned about hostages, they might not be doing that. Just a thought. The 4-hour humanitarian pause, the fact that we have a phrase like that, the fact that this is what politics has come to, these like ridiculous catchphrases, it's infuriating to me.
4 hours out of the day, you have humanity, and the other
but if
20,
you're gonna
you
just,
have none.
But then the other 20 hours of the day, you're undoing everything that you're doing. The worst thing that's making me insane is when I watch the doctors, whether it's Doctors Without Borders, I've seen all different medical people talking about the situation there. And then to hear, we're having 4-hour pauses. Well, and you hear the doctor saying, well, we stitch people up and then they get blown up again. Like, this is the most absurd response. I feel like I am in a bizarro world, but I know that it's real. But and that the fact that people are taking teams on this and are arguing and hating me because I'm the messenger, they don't like what I'm saying, as if I'm saying anything, Max, that isn't just these people do not acknowledge Nakba. They do not acknowledge that. They're basing their opinions on a mythology.
There's no occupation.
No, they don't. They literally do not know.
I've heard people tell me like, Palestine has never had a state. Like, it's never existed. It's like,
yes.
You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. It's okay to admit you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
But that's always the problem.
But they don't. They
talk.
Exactly.
But even if they don't know, there's no curiosity. There's no wanting to know.
No.
It is a shutdown. I have to look through the messages on Instagram because Jen doesn't want to look at them.
I don't want, because you
And
know what?
so-
I'm done talking about this from a sense of,
But it's always the same.
I
can
cannot
tell
say it.
you universally.
You
that
guys'
the
time is
people-
much better spent doing what you're doing here. Like, don't
Exactly.
fuck the haters, like, because they're like,
I
look,
can't.
This happens in labor organizing too, and as you guys know, that's where
Yes.
I like spend most of my time. Like, not everything is a labor issue, but I think labor movements, workers movement have a lot to teach us about the world, about history, and about our own humanity. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if I didn't believe that to be the case. But the reason that I bring that up is that even trained organizers will tell you is like, you're not going to be able to reach everybody in a union drive. There are always going to be people who are just fundamentally anti-union to the core and who see it as their duty to thwart your efforts. And so you could either waste your time trying to appeal. I mean, of course, try, but once people tell you who they are, believe them, as the saying goes. And so if a person is making it clear that they are in fact going to be on the opposite side of you and your coworkers exercising their rights, then your job as an organizer in that situation is to form your kind of like top level of like really engaged folks. That's your organizing committee. Then you got a huge mass of people in the middle who can be swayed one way or the other.
Right.
That is your target. But you also have a subset of people who are wreckers, people who are, again, hostile to the union. You need to like come together with the organizing committee, organize the people in the middle, and isolate the people in that other category who are, you know, trying
Saboteurs, because that's what they are.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are just out to interfere. For me, what the biggest issue I have with those people, and when we were talking about, as a Jewish person talking to other Jewish people about Israel, is that they don't want to know. They really don't want to know. It's like they're very positioned, but the point is what they're arguing, what the basis is, it's personal, it's emotional, and it's religious based. That by definition to me means we're not working within reason.
Right.
So once we're not working within reason, then we're not going to be able to have a reasonable discussion. And so that's fundamentally the problem with a lot of these pro-Israel Zionists, is that they were taught a mythology. They do not want to learn otherwise. They're being willfully ignorant. And so you cannot discuss it with them. If somebody quotes the Bible to me as like the reference to their rights, I'm just like, we're done.
We're
done.
When the second they say it is the divine right of Jews to have Israel, it's like, okay, that's it.
We're
Conversation's
done. So,
And
right,
so-
there's no there.
And so, the other problem that you also have to recognize is that it is a very specific sect. I mean, look, it's predominantly privileged women in the suburbs who happen to either be Jewish or they're Israeli Jewish. And so it's very common in terms of the people you're going to see.
I get hate
who are
from
gonna
plenty of
reject.
men.
Men are out there too. Sissy men, as I like to say. There's
He
a lot
calls
of
them
those,
betas.
a lot of beta men out there who like to bitch and complain. Max knows, That's why Max and I are friends. Because we understand that some guys just kind of, they don't even need to get punched, they need to get slapped.
Well, this like
Somebody
my
just needs
23-year-old, there was
So-
this guy down here and he met him. He's like, I wanted to punch him in his vagina.
Or just slap him in his mouth.
I'm just- all right,
either way,
whatever,
Just
go
gets
on.
the job done. But
I mean, I will say this, not to sound like a total boomer, but as someone who has punched people and been punched, I think it teaches you a lot of things.
I
Same.
have said that many
Same.
times, that there
Yeah.
are certain women that I see, especially in Congress, that have never properly been put in their place. And it's something that, and you know this, Max, like old school, and I'm older than both of you, but like you got everyone at some point needs to be put in their place. That's life.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Well, there's a lot, but you know what I'm saying, right, Max? Like people, everybody at some point needs to get put.
A kind of humility that if you do not, if you live your life long enough without that requisite humility, you will become a monster. And those kinds of monsters are the people who run our goddamn society, because their money, their power, their privilege, their connections cocoons them in a sort of protective fantasy world where they don't ever have to get called on their bullshit, and they don't ever have to face the reality that a lot of us do just growing up, which is if you start some shit, you're going to get some shit. Right?
Exactly.
Which is why they get so defensive and so fragile from the slightest bit of pushback. To even suggest it's, if anybody wants to know who the most privileged Yeah, I mean, again, there's a lot of Jewish women that have given just Jews in general a very bad reputation over the past few weeks. But if there is one who truly stands out above the rest, it is Deborah Messing. And the fact that she pulled that shit.
Amy Schumer's up there
Amy
too.
Schumer's up there too, no question about it. But Deborah has always, the one thing I will say about Amy Schumer, I don't constantly hear her talking about how important she is to the Democratic Party. Like Deborah Messing would talk about it. You know, I've spent time with President Biden and he needs to listen to me. It's like that type of thing. So she gives a speech. She gives a speech.
Seriously.
Where Max could Deborah Messing have possibly given a speech? Oh, the Upper West Side of Manhattan. You know, it's you just, they cannot get away from the fact that the anti-Semitism that is on fire right now. I am not denying that. But if you can't recognize where it's coming from, you have on the one hand people like Deborah Messing who are trying to pretend like they're being persecuted like Rashida Tlaib. And then on the other hand, you also have this component of,
oh my God,
1,400 Israelis were killed. Do you know that Netanyahu's government has been funding Hamas to the tune of God knows how much money for the past multiple decades?
Oh, yes.
Where do you think this starts
Guardian
from?
just reported today that Netanyahu was offered a prisoner exchange or like hostage release for a 4-day ceasefire, and he turned it down.
Yes, he did.
He does not give a shit about, like, I mean, this is,
that's the thing. They don't care about hostages.
It's in your face now. It's in your face that this is not what you think it is. This is an ethnic cleansing. And as I said, this happened on, I think, was it a Tuesday? Whatever the date was, October 7th that it happened, the very next day or the day after that we came on live, and I said, oh, this is their shot. They've been looking for this. And it almost makes you think, maybe not think, but actually is the case, that this may have been orchestrated to actually happen this way. And if that was the case, they were looking for their opportunity to basically say, oh, we are going to take our shot now and get them all. We are going to mow the lawn, and we're going to mow it until it's all mowed, all of it. We're going to get them all. We will bomb them to oblivion. We will put them through the famine that no one's talking about, because that's over the next several years. You just wait and see the type of disease that is going to grow out of that area.
The chain of events put in place is too far gone now. I do, in terms of like in Gaza, the disease, like the.
I've been saying this for, I'm going to say it now for the first time, because I've been saying this in private, but I'm going to say it now. Netanyahu is walking into Mussolini territory. Like, he is that close to turning into him, where he is going to need armored guards wherever he goes, because he was a war criminal before this even happened. Now he's taken it to the level that you haven't seen since probably the Vietnam War. Like, that's how serious this is.
Well, for him, he's like all or nothing, because like he's looking at like some serious like criminal charges against him.
Absolutely. Well, listen, let's see if the UN is willing to charge him, you know, in The Hague, because that's where he belongs. We all know that.
Well, you want to know the list of
like,
people that belong there.
You know, like, and you know, let's not forget.
It could be him.
Could be us.
Forget, or for many people who didn't know, what was it, 90?
It's not us. He said he was having connection.
Yes.
Assassinated. Hey, can you guys hear me?
Now we can
now, yeah.
Okay, cool. Like I said, the internet sucks, so I'm sorry. Maybe I know all I was saying was that Netanyahu's rise came with a political assassination of you know, he didn't assassinate him, but his rabid supporters did. Rabin 5, and Rabin's widow blamed Netanyahu for it. I mean, like, so I only say that to say is like, I'm not an expert on this fucking thing. We've been reporting on it as much as we can. I have learned a tremendous amount by following the work of people like Chris Hedges, Mark Steiner. There's a lot of great work out there to take advantage of. I would highly recommend people do support the people who are doing that reporting. Support Mondawais, +972, right? You know, either Al Jazeera, anywhere where you can get good and better information. We need that now more than ever. And please check us out at The Real News. I hope that we're doing what we can to help that effort. But I just wanted to say this before my internet craps out, and I know that we got to get going soon, is that's also the conversation ender, right? Is like, if you have not grown up with this, if you are not a scholar in it, like, you know, you don't have a place to say. But like, look, as a Goy, a member of the Goyim here, I grew up in Southern California, like, you know, it would seem I have no real dog in this fight. But when children are being slaughtered, I have a dog in that fight. I cannot stand idly by when this kind of inhumanity is allowed to unravel and unfold in the way that it is, so recklessly, so disastrously.
Yeah.
Because that is a stain on all of our souls. That is so much lost life, so much lost potential. We have a report coming out next week from Jenin refugee camp, which we actually shot in July. It's a really beautiful, harrowing, terrifying documentary. It's 13 minutes, but it's with these people who've been living in a refugee camp on occupied land, who are sitting there with guns in their hands, scars all over their body, and they said, I wanted to be a dentist. Like, I wanted to be an engineer. I didn't want to grow up like this, but there's nothing here. We have been treated like animals. We have had our families killed. There are no prospects here. There's nothing to do except fight. And our choices are either to die from daily humiliation or die fighting. That is what they literally say to the camera. And like, we have put people in that position. This is what I would say, Pete, to your point, is like, I don't know. We'll find out. Maybe we'll find out that, you know, like that this was orchestrated. I can't say that. What I can say is that this was always going to happen.
Yeah.
Because, and that's what they knew, is that if it wasn't this time, if it wasn't October 7th, it was going to happen sometime, because you can't keep 2+ million people in a concentration camp for 2 decades where you control their whole fucking lives, their borders. You're bombing them. You are sniping them. You're killing them. You're taking out their limbs, their eyes. You're killing their children. You are starving their people. And there's a 50% unemployment rate in that open air prison. You cannot keep people, human beings, in that situation without it eventually boiling over, because human beings want to live and they yearn to live freely. And if they need to, they will take violent action against those who are trying to take that away from them. It happened to slaves in the South. The slave revolts happen all over the goddamn world. So like, it was an inevitability. So that's why the whole, do you condemn Hamas? Do you condemn this? Who gives a shit what I think about like the correctness of their actions or the moral reprehensibility of this or that? What I condemn is anyone who refuses to see that if you keep human beings in this kind of situation, violence is going to happen. I mean, this is violence. Violence is going to breed more violence. So if you want that violence and death to stop, the occupation has to end. People need to be living as equals. There needs to be something other than this kind of terrible apartheid system, this system of dehumanization. That's what I know. I don't need to be a fucking expert in the history of Israel Palestine to know that what is right and what is wrong, and what happens to people when you keep them so beaten down and so thoroughly just dehumanized for so long. This is what happens. And so I agree that, like, insofar as Netanyahu or anyone in Israel's government knew that this was going to happen, they knew that eventually people in Gaza were going to try to break out of their prisons, and then they could use that as the excuse to mow the lawn, like they did. And the last thing that I would say, just to what you were saying, Jen, because I think this is really important, and I just really want people to consider this, is that the majority of people out there right now who are trying to do something or figure out how to feel about this issue are not Debbie Wasserman Schultz, as we know. They're the people who watch your stream. They're the people we saw there in DC last Saturday. They're people like my parents, right? They're people of good conscience who are really, really struggling with to square this circle. And what I always tell them is that you don't have to square it. The problem is that it cannot be squared. That's why you're feeling so frazzled right now, because this whole situation is built up of human and moral contradictions that cannot be rectified, like the fact that you can have progressive leaning Israelis living, like their lives in kibbutzim, falling in love, having children, having dreams, having family, like not being bad people, just being as good of people as the people who died on 9/11 in the day-to-day sense. And yet they were living 3 kilometers from a concentration camp. They were having a concert on the border of a concentration camp, just like we in the United States are going about our lives, having concerts, having football games on land that we stole from the people who were here before, and we genocided them to get rid of it. That's the contradiction that we're trying to square, and you can't square it because it's not meant to be. Because if you have consistent moral principles, then you understand that, yes, if I was in the Palestinians' position, I would do anything to get out of that situation. I don't care who, and I would learn to hate the people who did this to me. Like, that's just a natural human thing, so that they should not be put in that position. In the same way as, like, I do not want people like I grew up with, like neighbors, regular people, just like waking up in the middle of the night and getting slaughtered in their homes, right? But that's what's going to happen when you try to like pay that's like what the whole like I mean, like, in a weird way, it reminds me of like movies like Poltergeist. Like, it's just like you can't have your happy paradise on a land where so much atrocity has been committed that you have not rectified in any way. I don't mean to trivialize this with a movie thing. I'm just saying, like, so many of our own stories are premised on this fact that, like, the repressed will always return. The violence will always come back. You can't just eradicate an entire people and expect to not get blowback from those people who are not, as human beings, we fight to live. We're never going to accept being exterminated. So until the last one of us is dead, we're going to fight. And so that's what's going to happen here. And so, but even if you do get rid of everybody, even if you could somehow get rid of everybody, and we're watching what that looks like. And it's horrifying. And so even if you can do that, can you live with yourself? Can you build a society that is built from all of that horror, and not have that horror, not have that stain on your soul, not have that fundamental moral contradiction at the heart of the society that you say has a right to exist? That is going to haunt you. It is going to eat you from the inside, much like it has eaten the United States. It's taken a couple hundred years. It is going to eat you. And we have to stop that. Like, otherwise it's mutually assured destruction. Like, there's no other way. And so I guess that's my plea to people, is like, don't play teams, don't pick sides insofar as like this is a national question, this is a religious question, this is a human question. This is like, we need to save ourselves from ourselves. We need to save our brothers and sisters in Gaza who are having their futures eradicated, their children, their family eradicated. We need to stop this insane idea that we could just start a nation in the middle of an existing one 75 years ago and then give that nation endless military aid so that it expands and takes over that land and clears the people out, subsumes the Palestinians into a permanent apartheid system, if not just getting rid of them entirely. That can't go on. It can't. Sorry, that's
no, it's okay. I've always said there's only two options how this ends, and I've said this for a while. Either there's justice and just freedom from the river to the sea, freedom. The fact that people take that to mean their annihilation is a projection of their own genocidal thoughts. However, so you either have a freedom or you have a genocide. Those are the only two options. There's no other way out of this. And that is ultimately where we are. So whether or not you're on whichever team you're on, those are the facts. So if people that just, they really believe in the right to a Jewish state, that you want to go with that, go with that. But that goes with the genocide. You cannot have it the other way. Ethno-state equals ethno-cleanse. And it's not rocket science. So it's just so frustrating when they're sitting there with these things like, well, that's the democracy. Israel is the best democracy in the Middle East. And I'm thinking, that's less of a democracy than we are. And it would be maybe if we built like electric fences around our indigenous reservations and started monitoring how they come and go, like if we can make it even worse for the people that are already oppressed here. But you said something before I want to go back to where you said like somehow it isn't, you don't have a dog in this race, and you do, because everybody that, I mean, first of all, ultimately we're all on that team, right? We're all on the team of the oppressed. We're all on the team of the people that are being kept down. And it's a spectrum. And where you come from, being Mexican American, it's like, that, it's like you have way more in common with the people that are being oppressed than with people that are doing the oppress. And that's just generally, I think, and I do, even though, yes, I am a Jewish person and I am not a Zionist, but, you know, like my people came from being genocided in Russia back at the turn of the century, last century. But so, you know what I'm saying? Like, so, but we all have, that's what's so frustrating, is that we don't understand that our alliance is with the oppressed.
But I still maintain that this all comes back to the universal theme of what we've been fighting for since we first linked up a couple of years ago, which is this is a class war. And if you look at the overwhelming majority of people who are in favor of what Israel is doing, they are of extreme affluence.
Yeah.
There is no denying that that is a huge part of this equation. And if we're going to end on a high note, let's at least touch on what has been a positive development.
Good
that, of
news.
course, is getting no attention whatsoever. UAW has hit a real positive mark for the labor movement. We've said for a while that
I love you, Sean Fain.
if anybody should be running for president right now, it's Sean Fain. Yep.
I love him. I would call me.
And today, of course, SAG-AFTRA reached an agreement on their union contract in Los Angeles. And that, of course, is obviously a great thing for our friends Robert John Burke, Francis Fisher, Jolie Fisher, and then, of course, you have
Sean
David,
Astin.
Sean Astin, David Jolliffe.
Yeah, we've had our SAG-AFTRA peeps on. But no, and they had, from my understanding, I heard Fran giving a few interviews, like they had, it sounds like they got what they really needed to get for
protection
their people.
against AI, which is really what you need.
I mean, is that was sort of the high note we were going to maybe end on? It's like there's actually some progress in labor.
Well, I mean, I can kind of pick up on that because like this definitely merges the conversations, right? Because I have been among the many critics of the organized labor movement here in the United States for so cowardly sitting in silence while this genocide unfolds before our eyes for days and weeks on end. And if not, you know, if these unions were not actively supporting it and expressing unwavering support for Israel, like the AFT and Randy Weingarten did, right? But I am happy to say that more workers and unions are taking that brave step, as they so often do, right? To stand up for what's right, to stand up for our rights, to stand up for freedom, our need to live freely. That is ultimately what the labor movement and every social justice movement is about, is people want to be free. And so we are fighting against these systems that keep us from being that, or the historical legacies that impede our ability to live freely, or that only allow some people freedom while at the expense of the freedom of others, so on and so forth, right? How free can you be as a person in this country when you are shackled by the burdens of rising rent costs and untenable healthcare costs and so on and so forth, all while your boss is making billions of dollars? Like this is where the labor movement fights, right? And it is connected to everything that we've been talking about here, because, like, again, anywhere there is someone fighting to live freely and fighting to enjoy their life and live with dignity, like the labor movement is there. That is the heart of it, right? So we should all take up that mantle wherever it may be. And brave folks like Cooper Caraway and many others who spoke out about the genocidal assault on Gaza in the wake of the October 7th Hamas-led attacks. Cooper got fired from SEIU for doing that, and he's one of the most brilliant labor organizers I've ever had the honor of speaking with. I call Cooper a very close friend and comrade, and he, like many others, have lost their jobs for speaking out about this. But the more people are doing it, the more that they are getting ennobled and emboldened to speak out. And so the first AFL-CIO affiliated union just fully called for a ceasefire today, I believe it was, which was the American Postal Workers Union. So huge shout out to them. That's a big union, but also a number of locals have been calling for a ceasefire. If folks want, they could go check out In These Times. I believe Jeff Shirky and Sarah Lazar, they've been doing great work covering who on labor is actually speaking out about this. But on top of that, workers are also taking direct action. So I'm going to talk about that. Then I'm going to talk about the contract wins because it's a progression. But the actions, like that's what I've been trying to do for the past 2 weeks at the Real News, because I've been trying to get people from Palestine on it, because Mark has been talking to folks in Israel. We've been just trying to get people voices on the ground. And it took me 3 weeks to finally get 9 minutes with a Palestinian living in the occupied West Bank. And it was the most intense interview I've ever done. And it's on my show, Working People. So if folks want to check it out, listen to my interview with Issa Amro. I beg you. But at the same time, while I was trying to get through to people in Gaza, in the West Bank, and elsewhere, I was also looking for wherever I could find working people who were standing up for what's right, wherever they may be. And so I found union members in the United Kingdom who formed a human blockade around an Israeli weapons supplier, a plant in Kent. They formed a human blockade around it. They disrupted the production of that war machine. And people here in the United States started doing that too. We've seen the news about reports, and I want to clarify that it's not necessarily like a labor action that's happening at the ports in Oakland and Tacoma. It's people, it's different organizations showing up to the ports. What I have heard, just from talking to longshore workers over there, is that, again, insofar as they can speak off the record about it, like they believe in this, they support it, but as a union, it's a different matter. But what they were saying is we can't get to the ship because the protesters are blocking it. And that's why now at Tacoma, I think it was the military that unloaded that fucking ship, right? But people are still taking that action. And just like rank and file healthcare workers, I interviewed one for Breaking Points this past week who led a vigil in solidarity with their slain healthcare colleagues in Gaza. Like, these are healthcare workers across New York City who are looking at their colleagues manning their stations in hospitals that don't have fuel, where babies are dying in incubators, and people on dialysis machines are just dying because Israel's cut off all their fuel and bombs are getting dropped on those hospitals. So a working person who is trying to work in a hospital here can't help but see that and want to do something about it. And people are doing something about it. And if you're watching this, you can do something about it too. There are people all around you. You just have to look. And I hope that we at the Real News are trying to uplift that struggle and show you how you can get involved in your own way. Everyone has something to offer. No one can do everything, but everyone can do something. And now, in terms of what that means for the internal domestic labor movement here in the United States, I think this is a really exciting and interesting time, because Sean Fain and the UAW, they really built on the momentum of Sean O'Brien and the Teamsters. And I want to be clear that also both of those contract campaigns were successful, or the success that they got. There's always more. There's always parts of the contract that could have been better. There's always a fight that we still got to have. This fight is not over by a long shot.
Right.
The contracts that UPS workers got and the tentative agreements that the auto workers are currently reviewing, they're a shit ton better than the last ones were. So that's still something, right? And so the point is just those contracts would not have, the concessions would not have been given by the companies if the rank and file was not building a credible strike threat and not showing their unity when the time came to strike, and getting the public on their side, walking the line. That's why the companies caved, because they couldn't turn the public against the auto workers like they could in past strikes, right? And so again, we all have a role to play here in keeping that momentum going and making sure that no group of workers is left behind, because while the UAW auto workers are going over their tentative agreements right now, which is great, and SAG-AFTRA have got their tentative agreement, which is fantastic, we still got Pittsburgh Post-Gazette workers who have been on strike for over a year now. They've been on strike for 13 months and they've been forgotten. We can't forget about them, but we need to bring that momentum over to them. The Starbucks workers still don't have a goddamn contract in any store. We need to fix that. We need to change that. We need to hold Starbucks accountable. And the more that we build on that momentum, the more that people feel like we can actually win and that we can move the seemingly immovable, that we can actually do something to change our circumstances, and then that we are not just the playthings, the listless playthings of our bosses and politicians who get to make all the decisions for us, but we can actually do something to change the world around us, improving our wages, our working conditions, having a better workplace where people want to stay, colleagues can grow their relationships and build a career. Like, that's something that you can do. And once you take care of yourself there, then you set yourself up to take more action in your community. Go and be at your school board meetings, right? Go get more involved in a political campaign. It all starts somewhere, but it cascades and builds the more power that we build collectively and the more that we win. And so if we are feeling helpless and hopeless as we watch the genocide in Gaza unfold, and we feel like we have nothing that we can possibly do to do that, all I'm saying is that that is how most people feel in terms of changing their circumstances in their daily lives. They feel helpless. They feel hopeless. They feel like they don't even have a right to say anything to their bosses, let alone the corporations that employ them. But working people have been showing since time immemorial that we can change things, that we can, in fact, when we work together, we can move the immovable, we can change the seemingly unchangeable, we can actually build a better world out of the ashes of the old. That is the enduring message of the labor movement. It's the message that we all need to hear right now. Do not give up. Don't ever give up, because nothing is impossible until it is. Or nothing, what was the great quote from Nelson Mandela? Yeah, I don't know. Just something seems impossible until it isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just standing in that crowd on Saturday, it really was very inspired. I've never been in anything that big ever. I've never been in anything that big in my life. And I used to go to dead shows. So I'm just saying, like, and it was just very inspired. And I didn't see a single problem. I didn't see a single, I mean, there were a few medical issues that I heard over the loudspeaker, but I didn't see any disruption, any like, I didn't see anything negative. The fact that there were 300,000 people in that small of a space and there was no trouble. The only police I saw were just making a border around the parade. Like, did you see anything? Like, I didn't, like, the police presence was it to me felt like they were actually there to protect the people from the cars. Like, that was pretty much all I saw in terms of any police presence. Did you notice anything there?
I mean, there definitely were plainclothes people in that crowd. I can say that just knowing what I know about DC police. But
yeah,
I did not see aggressive policing. I saw, like, folks, like there was a prominent police presence, but it definitely seemed like most other marches of like we had a march here in Baltimore that was also, it was put on by like the Party for Socialism and Liberation, Palestinian Youth Movement, Jewish Voices for Peace, or Black Alliance for Peace. So, like groups like that, and the police were there. People were even saying fuck the cops, because no one here in Baltimore likes the cops, and we have good reason not to. And the cops were just there basically making sure that the march followed the route that was prescribed, that people didn't get hit by cars and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I saw. I will just also say that this is connected to like the question that has been coming up over previous days of like how big the march was.
Yeah.
And like, when I was reporting there, and Jessel Noor and I, we actually produced a 2-minute, 20-second shorter report on Saturday that like went viral, because we wanted to make sure that people saw about this event on the day that it happened. So we literally shot all day at the rally. We go to the train station and we're editing the thing on the train to Baltimore so we can get it up by the time that we get there. And so at that point, I was on the ground like you were. You can only tell how many people are in that big of a space.
Right, you can't tell.
Right. If you don't have an aerial view, you can't really tell. And so what I was saying and also it's not like it's on the National Mall where you have like spatial kind of markers that have like March on Washington. We can estimate how many people fill that space. This was in Freedom Plaza and marching to the White House. But based on like what I could see from the ground, I was like, I'm confident in saying there are tens of thousands of people here. There may even be over 100,000 people here. And then people were like, but no, it was 300,000. I was like, well, how do you know that? Like, I can't say that as a journalist. I need to be able to verify that. And so I think, like, based on like what we've been able to analyze, Ryan Harvey had a great aerial analysis of this, estimating that the crowd could have been between like 140 to I think 180,000. That's massive. It is absolutely massive. And so for that many people to congregate in the middle of DC and for it to not turn into like a massive shitstorm, fight with the police, like, I mean, that's in itself is an incredible feat.
They would have liked to have had that. That's the point. They would have liked for it to have gotten out of hand.
They always want that.
Because that's the story that would have made the news. Would have been, oh, these crazy Free Palestine anti-Semite protesters are...
I might get that on Monday. I'm going to be at in Atlanta this weekend. So I'm going to be at Stop Cop City on Monday. And I don't think that is necessarily going to be as smooth and peaceful as what we just saw in DC. That's just my thought. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I go into everything with just sort of like love in my heart and just whatever. But I'm just saying.
But times are changing. There's no question that that's what's happening right now. And you can see the reaction from.
Tell my friend have bail money. Have bail money.
No, there's no question that there's more people on the side of Free Palestine than they are on the side of pro-Israel. There's no question that is where the momentum is moved now. And how they're going to curb that, I don't think it's possible, because they know that the massacre is just getting worse and worse. And the truth is, it's unfortunate that we're basically all, kabuki theater when it comes to our politics. But, Rashida Tlaib is a much more sympathetic character than Debbie Wasserman Schultz could ever be. And so by having that dynamic differentiation between the two is so stark, I think people will recognize that. And I think that will win the day. And it is unfortunate that there have been some very significant labor victories that really are not getting anywhere near the attention that they really should be getting. But in another way, maybe that's for the better of the circumstance, because all the credit in the world to all of these grassroots organizations that are ensuring that the fate of the Palestinian people does not slip by the wayside. Corporate media is hoping that it goes away, but they're not letting it go away. And it is going to dominate the 2024 election cycle.
It's not going away. Genocide, Joe.
And so for that end,
that ain't gonna fucking stick. We gotta make that one stick.
Amen.
Oh, you know what? When I saw the signs and I heard the chants for that, I'm like, yeah, that's gonna
that's got a ring to it.
Yeah, I'm like, that's got something good to it. There were some really great signs. I took some great pictures of some people are just so freaking creative. And it's like some of the signs that I would think would be offensive. So I'm there with my friend, and her wife is Palestinian and wasn't able to be there. So she was sort of there representing their little their family and whatever. And she sees this sign that says, it's like, Jewish dyke for Jewish dyke mother. It was like this whole characteristic of thing. And she's like, we have to go meet her. So then we're like scooting through the crowd, following this dyke sign, trying to find this woman. And then we finally get up to it. And then they're like making friends and taking pictures with each other's signs and all this stuff. And it's like, it was really hilarious to me. I'm like, it's funny that they thought that was nice. I thought it was a little rude, but whatever. Okay. Far be it for me.
Too bad you couldn't have met up with Max and hung out with Chris Hedges too. But
I know, time. And I understand why Chris looks grumpy. He is grumpy.
Well, if you
look what he deals with.
Yeah,
people
that man's seen shit.
Exactly.
He's in Qatar right now. He like Al Jazeera. Like the reason that this is the last thing I say. I'll promise, because I wanted to make sure after that march that because Chris came into the studio to record on Monday. And I wanted to have Mark Steiner interview him about okay, you were at the New York Times Middle East bureau in Jerusalem. I want you to tell us what you learned covering this about how Netanyahu works, what the end game is here. And Chris was like, okay, we can do it, but only in this window, because I got to run back to New Jersey because Al Jazeera is flying me out to Qatar to report on this. And I'm going to go to Egypt as well. And I'm going to report. I mean, that guy fucking legend, but he is also seen so much horror. You can tell it weighs on him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
I'm a big fan. We had him on once in our original Julian Assange thing. He was one of our people that came on, but we haven't had him on
should
since.
have a follow up with him at some point.
He's one of the smartest people doing what is being done. Like he just is. He's so bright.
Max, thank you as always. Plug whatever you would like, and
Everybody watch the Real News Network.
Oh, of course we know that, but anything else you got going on, brother?
That's mainly it. I mean, I hope to everyone watching that my rants were coherent, because I feel like I've been like everyone else. I mean, like just overwhelmed, running around, trying to do whatever I can to help and trying to get as much coverage from different sides, different voices as I can. And it just feels like a year has gone by in the past 3 weeks. And so please, just go check out the work that we've put out as a team at the Real News.
Yeah,
myself, Mansa Musa, who's still doing like other important.
I love Mansa Musa, and I also want to say shout out to the guy over there. Do you watch the sports guy,
Dave Zirin? You guys got to have Dave on the show because he's also a Jewish voice, outspoken against.
He's great. I forwarded him the thing, something from him. Like, we have to get this guy on the show. Oh yeah,
I'll connect you guys to Dave, because he did a segment today on the new College of Florida, and DeSantis.
You could talk sports games, and we could talk serious things, and you could talk about your little sports games.
Yeah, Pete, you're gonna absolutely love his show. Just go check it out. I promise you'll like it.
I'm just determined to get the Washington Redskins namesake back. That's what's most important to me. That's what I care about.
Can't even.
That's my. I
can't.
That's a joke.
I know it is.
well, just in terms of plugging, like that's it. Like we're busting our ass at the Real News.
Yeah.
So anyone watching, like, go take advantage of it. We do shows on labor, on the prison industrial complex, the police industrial complex, the imperialist war machine, and the people who are fighting against these things. Like we are trying to bring you news from the front lines of struggle. And so please support that. Go to the Real News, check out our YouTube channel, support my podcast, Working People. Subscribe to that. Check out my recurring labor segment, The Art of Class War, on Breaking Points. And just don't lose hope, because that's when the bastards win. So, like, whatever you can do to make a difference, do it. Even if it's just checking in on your neighbors, right? Even if it's just providing a space where people can feel a little less horrible than we all do right now. And also maybe we can turn that into an opportunity to take some sort of collective action in our workplaces, in our apartment buildings, wherever the hell we can. Just don't give in to the fiction that you are helpless. You are not. You are beautiful. You are powerful. You can do something to stop this. None of us can do it alone, but we can do it together. That's what
exactly. That's awesome. Do you have anybody going to be in Atlanta this weekend? Is there any Real News people going to be down there?
I got folks who are going to be there, but not working for us. But I'm grateful to you for being down there, and just give everyone that love. This is also a really, really important fight.
It is to me. This is also a hill that I'm going to apparently have to die on. So it is what it is.
You got many of those, Jen.
That's funny now. We'll text, and if there's anybody we can link Jen up when she's up there, we'll work it out.
Shoot me a text.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Max.
One of our very favorite.
I love Max.
He really knows this. Again, he's we've got our crew. We've got like our special people that could come on at the drop of a hat, and he's our labor guy. And
well, he's a lot of things. He's just general justice. But yeah, guys, he has that book he wrote. It's stories of the. God damn it, I can never remember the name.
Smoking too much.
No, that's not why. It's a book. It's a compilation of stories. Max spent the year of COVID year basically traveling around and interviewing and meeting frontline workers and different workers, and really getting their stories into how they were being affected by that shutdown, by the pandemic, and just in general how their lives were. And it's just a compilation of really good stories all through different industries. Like he talks to somebody who does coal mining, somebody a nurse, somebody, like, it's just, he's very much on the front lines.
And don't forget, and I want to reiterate one point that I made, is that what most of you will have to remember, and you'll notice this very, very clearly when it comes to the people in the Jewish community who support what Israel is doing and those who are on the side of Free Palestine. This is very much a class war. The overwhelming majority of people that are in the Jewish community that are supporting Israel's efforts are the likes of the Deborah Messings of the world.
I got to show the back of my shirt, though. You got to see the back of the shirt.
You got to stand up a little. There you go. There you go. And you're shaking that stupid thing. We got to take those stupid things off.
All right,
camera.
whatever. This is the Jewish Voice for Peace shirt that I got from them.
But that's not all that happened in the last 24 hours.
What other crazy nonsense is going on? Because if a genocide's not enough.
Well, there was a GOP debate, and they really want you to know just how bloodthirsty their side is if they were pulling the levers of power in the executive branch right now.
I don't like him.
Timmy Scott.
I don't like him.
People. So here's a little highlight reel of last night's GOP debate.
Raise the retirement age a few years for folks that are in their 30s and 40s. I have a son who's in the audience tonight who's 30 years old. If he can't adjust to a few-year increase in Social Security retirement age over the next 40 years, I got bigger problems with him than his Social Security payments. And the fact is, we need to be realistic about this. There are only three things that go into determining whether Social Security can be solvent or not: retirement age, eligibility for the program in general, and taxes. That's it. We are already overtaxed in this country, and we should not raise those taxes. But on eligibility also, I don't know. Think about...
Can he
so
phone
can I
a friend?
just say, honest to God,
a friend?
the fact that Chris Krispy Kreme is not even polling right now, and they're letting him on the stage basically to just try to be an attack dog for Donald Trump. And yet, what does he go up there and talk about? We have to cut Social Security, even though everybody knows that there's two rules of thumb with Social Security.
It's a loser politically.
It's a loser politically. We're totally protecting Social Security and Medicare. So if Trump is saying it and he's at over 60%.
Chris Christie's just literally being paid to be there to be like the foil.
So the idea that he's going to make those statements thinking that he's going to be winning favors. No, you know that there is a cap on taxable income of Social Security. You know who doesn't get taxed to pay into Social Security retirement fund? The rich.
Wait, but can we go to the fact that he needs some recommended reading? Has anyone ever suggested that he read something like, you know, The Deficit Myth? It's like the way that he's still sitting there and like people are struggling and he's harping on a fiction. It's a fiction. You know what? He needs to meet. We need an intervention. He needs to phone a friend. He needs to call Steve.
Here is the person who definitely made quite an impression last night.
Oh, no, not Vivek.
Mr. Vivek.
Who's moderating this debate? This should be Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk. We'd have 10 times the viewership, asking questions that GOP primary voters actually care about and bringing more people into our party. You think the Democrats, and we've got Kristen Walker here, you think the Democrats would actually hire Greg Gutfeld to host a Democratic debate?
No, they'll hire
their own
moron.
And so the fact of the matter is, I mean, Kristen, I'm going to use this time because this is actually about you in the media and the corrupt media establishment. Ask you, the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that you pushed on this network for years, was that real or was that Hillary Clinton made up disinformation? Answer the question. Go.
Mr. Roberts.
This is how we get our country.
That look of...
But here's the problem. But here's the problem is that these people, meaning this woman here, I don't know who that is, they are not running for president and they are not having a debate. And so the idea that he turned it a question into a question to me is a sign of weakness of him. However, the points he made were very salient.
I won't
That's all I
disagree
can
with
say.
that.
Like the points were salient, but it's very weak. And again, I would say that until we go back to the League of Women Voters hosting the debates, they'll continue to be nonsense.
Vivek definitely ruffled some feathers last night, and there's more to come.
You have the likes of Nikki Haley, who stepped down from her time at the UN. Bankrupt or in debt was her family. Then she becomes a military contractor. She joins the board of Boeing and otherwise, and is now a multimillionaire. So I think that that's wrong when Republicans do it or Democrats do it. That's the choice we face. Do you want a leader from a different generation who's going to put this country first? Or do you want Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels?
Let me just say.
I mean, Vivek, that takes a lot of balls, man. I mean.
Ooh, that was good, though. See, and I miss all this because you guys know I don't watch this crazy. This man in particular, I very much don't like. I want to put him in like a room with someone like Tim Black and just see what happens.
You know who he looks like? He reminds me of.
Don't say anybody I like or it'll ruin everything for me.
No, he almost.
Don't say anybody I like. Who does he remind you
He
of?
reminds me of the Burger King for some reason. I don't know why.
Burger King, the guy
that guy was like with the
Okay, first of all,
I don't know.
You and I are of different generations in terms of what the marketing and advertising things were. But no, I just feel like I can't say what I want to say about this man because I'm white. But like if my friend Mo were here, she would have some seriously good choice words.
Yeah, they try to one up each other in the worst possible way, but we'll play.
To every single university president in America, federal funding is a privilege, not a right. Number one. Number two, to every student who've come to our country on a visa to a college campus, your visa is a privilege, not a right. Number three, any campus that allows for anti-Semitism and hate, to allow students to encourage terrorism, mass murder, and genocide, you should lose your federal funding today, period. To all the students on visas who are encouraging...
That just say I'm Apex bitch.
So you're basically saying unequivocally that, you don't even have the right to free speech. In fact, not only do you not, especially when it comes to Israel, but we will kick you out of the country. Like that's how serious this is.
Well, why not? They're censuring an elected representative.
No wonder all of the true libertarian-leaning conservative polls that are out there have said that Vivek hands down won the debate last night because you've got clouds.
He had some good zingers. I want to know who wrote that one about Cheney and
Maybe
Beals.
he thought of it himself. It's
also, I want to know what kind of shoes Nikki Haley's wearing that they're 3 inches. I'm just curious.
Jewish genocide. I would deport you from those campuses. We have to stand strong with our Jewish Americans. At the end of the day, we should not have our Jewish students in a library being told to hide on our streets in New York. A Jewish citizen has the right to walk on the streets of America with no fear.
I was the first presidential candidate to say, if you are here on a student visa as a foreign national, you're making common cause with Hamas, I'm canceling your visa and I'm sending you home. No questions asked.
The founding vision of Israel was based on the idea that they don't want to depend on anybody else's sympathy or direction in defending themselves. So what I would tell Bibi is that Israel has the right and the responsibility to defend itself. I would tell him to smoke those terrorists on his southern border, and then I'll tell him as president of the United States, I'll be smoking the terrorists on our southern border. That's his responsibility. This is our responsibility. That's how we move forward. But I want to be careful to avoid making the mistakes from the neocon establishment of the past.
As president,
talk about overcompensation.
Oh my God, Lester Holt lost all his hair. That's all I can see right now.
He's halfway over the moon.
I can't believe that's Lester Holt. Oh my God. Yeah. This is how little I watch mainstream media that I haven't seen him in like 10 years.
But Vivek is the one person on the stage who isn't going full blown. Oh yeah, let's go to war on behalf of Israel against.
It didn't sound that different to me.
No, it didn't. But
it sounded a lot. And that's pitiful right there.
Of the United States, what would you be urging Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to do at this moment? Governor DeSantis.
I would be telling Bibi, finish the job once and for all with these butchers, Hamas.
The first thing I said.
Finish the job once and for all against Palestine. That's what he's really saying.
It is, but what's so interesting, against these butchers, Hamas, you mean the ones that Netanyahu put there and funded? Because he didn't want to actually create a just situation.
But it gets worse.
Said to him when it happened was I said, finish them. Finish them.
If you want to stop the 40+ attacks on military personnel in the Middle East, you have to strike in Iran.
They're talking.
Now, look, if we raise the retirement age a few years for folks that are in their 30s and 40s.
So that was it. But you get the idea, guys. You get the idea. That
they're like bloodthirsty war hawks.
If you thought it was bad enough that you've got the president of the United States saying, no ceasefire, never happening. Don't ask. It's not happening.
Finish them.
The GOP is letting you know, well, listen, the bridesmaids anyway. The bridesmaids are letting you know that this is not happening. The good news is that the overwhelming majority of what now constitutes the future of the GOP is not represented by the likes of Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley.
Thankfully.
People that are literally bloodthirsty to prove how much terror they can reign over the world.
How come there are none? But yet, what's interesting is that what we're seeing in Congress is that any sort of anti-war sentiment, action, resolution is only coming from the GOP. Yet none of that is represented in their presidential candidates.
Correct. And at the top, it's also reflective of where President Biden and the like are. The problem is that you also see the power that the corporate influence has still over the Democratic Party. Now, I'm not here to say that somebody like Debbie Wasserman Schultz still has that level of influence over the Democratic establishment, but I would still maintain that when you're the head of the party for 6 years, you do know where all the skeletons are buried. And you kind of are able to maneuver behind the scenes in a way that a lot of others are not, which is why a lot of people have always said, don't cross Debbie. There is a lot of fear that comes with dealing with somebody like her. And that's why you see the likes of Gottheimer and Schneier and all of them basically lining up to, go after Tlaib.
And the whole Florida delegation.
Correct. Well,
the whole Florida delegation.
Who didn't?
Maxwell Frost.
Who else? Sheila Sherfless McCormick. Thankfully. And Sheila, shout out to you, because you are the one person in South Florida who had the guts not to tag along with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And we all know Debbie's the ringleader.
I wonder if she was even like approached in the same way, because it's not like they're friends. It's not like Debbie's been welcoming and nice to Sheila since she got there.
And I would imagine that there is always personal animosity, but I also believe that there's a lot of people who recognize that what this is a genocide. And whether they go along with it or not, for whatever damn reason, it's pretty pathetic. But they do feel that they're untouchable. Especially down here, especially in Brooklyn, especially in San Francisco, especially in Chicago.
I'm not scared of those people at all.
Well, it's because a lot of them, like you said, are naive, over the hill, or Republican. Debbie really likes standing with the GOP.
Well, the truth is that, when she was in the Florida legislature and she, I would say that if you looked at her votes, other than the fact that she's been pro-choice, in her career, she has always voted in a way that you can't really tell between her and a lot of the Republican policies. I mean, she's been a war hawk. She always, and
the second she has the opportunity to get in front of the cameras in what she feels is an angle that she thinks will play well for her in her district, she can't get there fast enough.
Well, and Israel's like her baby.
Oh, absolutely. And she cannot get off of CNN and MSNBC these days.
And let me tell you how disgusting it is that is what represents not just Florida's District 25. Like, it's sad that represents us for sure. But the damage it does, that she represents Jews.
And how much anti-Semitism fervor comes
from that.
Oh my
God. Just especially watching her. Oh my God. Just average person watching her, a lot of people get a very visceral response. Like, she's very detestable. So it's like the fact that that's what's it's like fingernails on the blackboard, that that's what's representing Jews.
Let me tell you.
And they pointed out a prominent Jewish legislator. It's like, why are people wanting, she's the worst representation.
And I can assure you, I've stood near her more times than I care to count. Listening to that voice when she's going, let me tell you, it will raise the back of the hair on your neck. It will. And any of my friends who are down here who are hearing me say that, it's true.
Yeah. Travers, I'm not sure if you're joking. There's not, as far as I'm concerned, is a lot of Israelis in the U.S. Senate. There are, how many did I say? There are 38 Jewish people in Congress total. 28 are in the House, and there are 10 in the Senate. And of that list, I have yet to see any one of them on the correct real position here. Now, a handful of them did not go along with the 22 people in censuring Rashida Tlaib. So I will say that on a positive note.
Positive shout out to Jamie Raskin. He made a very positive statement on the floor regarding, listen, regardless of where I stand on this censorship is freaking nuts.
It's bad.
And it sets the worst kind of precedent. But we've been losing our civil liberties for a long time.
We have. But it's very upsetting to me that this is what we're seeing as far as Jewish representation.
For as little as $5 a month, you could become a sponsor of our small but mighty channel. As you know, we are demonetized and basically deplatformed as far as I'm concerned.
We're demonetized.
We cannot get any traction whatsoever. None. And I'm not taking anything away from our friends who do Dissonance or any other channels.
No,
but
I don't understand
for
it,
some reason, we can never get any type of traction. And we are going to continue to speak truth to power. Within the next week, we are supposed to be taken out of demonetization timeout. But I think we are all in agreement that considering what our show has basically morphed into over the last few weeks, it'll switch back very fast. So enjoy it while you can. But for $5 a month, you get yourself the Lulu stickers you can see.
And we are on Rumble.
Yes.
And that's the other thing. So like if we, you know, we can, for people who, you know, would want to support there, that's, at this point, I'm just sort of like, that's not for anything. We need to just.
Joe Manchin is no longer running for the U.S. Senate.
We need to just have special content.
He's going to be a no labels party candidate. I'm telling you, and they're talking about him and Mitt Romney on the joint ticket. That's what they're talking.
Interesting.
So exciting.
Actually, that is.
I never knew I could have wanted something so much in politics.
Actually, though, it is exciting to think of RFK running, Cornel West running, if they're running, like. I think that's awesome.
Just throw as much shit to the walls you possibly can, as far as I'm concerned. Anything other than what we have.
And the idea of RFK asking Jesse to be a part of that is.
But you see, Jesse's only going to go on that ticket if he amends his position on Israel, and if he doesn't, then hey, he's shit out of luck, man. But let me tell you, if RFK knew what he was doing, he would be jumping at the opportunity to have Jesse as his running.
Oh yeah. Can
Just
you
saying,
imagine how cool
that would be?
And Jesse's not wrong that would be somewhat of an insurance policy. That he's not wrong. It's like if they're more scared of anybody than that, it would be Jesse Ventura.
I can't.
What are you wanting?
I'm trying to reach the Jets. Well, actually, for the $25 contributors, you can get yourself the generational.
I'm not wearing it, but today, as in Shutdown for Palestine, I'm wearing my Not in Our Name Jewish Voice for Peace shirt.
Look at how awesome this silky smooth tri-blend.
Show the front. That's the back.
The back is great.
So, guys, and just in case, for any of my tribesmen out there, if you are interested in the Not in Our Name Jews Call for Ceasefire T-shirt, you can get them at JVP, Jewish Voice for Peace, their store online. Mm-hmm. And any tribesmen out there, please, if you can, support Jewish Voice for Peace. They've been doing some amazing actions, some of the best nonviolent resistance that we've seen in a long time. They're shutting down some stuff. And
if you guys are not subscribed to our Rumble channel, I would recommend that you go over and do that. It is generational change on Rumble. So make sure that you go over there. And of course, Cash App, $GenChange. Any amount that you can contribute is obviously tremendously appreciated. It helps us exponentially because it is the only way that we maintain our channel, since we have no other way of making money. Big shout out again to our patrons, because we do have a nice group of people. It is always great to see you supporting
Yeah, it's
channel.
really helpful, guys, everyone who supports us. And I know that we haven't updated tiers in a while, and I'd like to start doing something with, online, patron exclusive stuff for people. So
Deborah Grossbach, great to see you in the chat tonight. Really appreciate your support. And of course, our new supporters. We're going to play one last clip for you guys.
What do we have?
I think it's important to understand how the liberal mind virus, if you will, really infiltrates a significant portion of urban and suburban dwellers who are living relatively comfortable lives. And that, of course, leads us to the worst of the worst on TV. But it's important that you recognize the message that a channel like The View is putting out there, especially when it comes to millennials and Gen Zers who basically can't afford to.
I was going to ask you who that bimbo is. What are you going to make me? What are you subjecting me to? I don't like this toxic swill. What are you making me watch?
They're basically trying to insinuate that, well, I'm not even going to say.
I know it's just going to make me angry.
Well,
it's just going to make me angry. Just looking at that still frame makes me angry. No, I don't even know who that is, but she just looks like she makes me angry.
Well, let's not.
I don't know who it is, but I'm going to tell you right now, she's going to piss me off in about 5 seconds.
Here we go.
Millennials and Gen Z have a much different view of the American dream than past generations. Data shows that soaring inflation, student debt, and limited room for advancement in the workplace has made them feel that milestones like affording a home, starting a family, excelling within the corporate structure are out of reach. Does every generation feel this way at some point? I say yes. What do you think?
Well, since we're sticking with our Clinton theme today, it's the economy, stupid. Like, my generation is the generation of the housing crisis, the financial crisis, 9/11. We've been in war basically my entire generation. You've got 45% of people ages 18 to 29 living with their parents. Our American dream's different. Doesn't mean other struggles didn't matter, but on the having kids specifically, I get it. Most of my friends, if they're not, married by a certain age, they're not owning homes at the same rate, and you don't want to have kids if you don't feel like you can provide that. My one piece of advice, though, to millennials who are holding off having kids because of the finances, if you're in a position, which is also expensive, consider freezing your eggs because you could change that position later.
Oh, for the love of all that is holy.
How much does it cost to freeze eggs?
It's very pricey. But forget that. I cannot be looking at this anymore. That's like View Barbie.
But
okay?
can you believe that? No.
Who is that?
Alyssa. Oh, she worked on, I think she worked on Trump's.
Oh, for God's sake, let me tell you something, okay? Honestly, I do not know how you can tell the difference between this and a Bravo show.
Said, well, that's why I wanted to play this, because when she said freeze her eggs, isn't that like a really expensive thing to do?
Of course.
Unbelievable.
Want to, but no, it's hard. It is a very real struggle out there.
I think it's refreshing to see people enter parenthood so soberly, because I think for generations since the beginning of time, people get married, they just have babies because they're supposed to, and this is what we do. And then you see people like gay couples who fight so hard just to love a baby, and every day people are having kids that some are beaten and like not taken care of. And so to have a generation that says, I don't know if I can give them the life they deserve, I don't know if I'm capable of being a whole person and doing this, I say bravo, because it is not a slight undertaking.
That was my takeaway. I mean, my generation, I mean, you got married, you tried to get a house, and you had kids. And this seems to be very intentional. They're thinking about it. And I agree with you, though.
Millennials are brilliant.
Your eggs start turning to dust, and so you have to be careful. And so if you're a young person and you have any kind of chance
I just felt like,
freezing your eggs, which wasn't available to me when I was, your age, I think that you got to at least preserve the opportunity, because you may change your mind.
I'm sorry.
One kid is enough.
Yeah, well, but listen, every generation comes and wants to do better than their parents did. Every generation. But I'm sorry, if you only want to work 4 hours, it's going to be harder for you to get a house.
Oh my God.
And don't mention 4 days.
I feel for everybody that feels this, but I'm sorry. We busted our behinds. We had to bust our behinds because we didn't have the option of going back.
You all gave us the housing crisis, though.
But listen, we had all kinds of stuff.
No, it's true. But the one thing I'd say is millennials are statistically the first generation that's likely to do worse off than their parents.
You know what? That's what they said to us as well. Every generation is told you're going to do worse than your parents. And you know what? People pick it up and they do what they do, and they raise themselves. And this is what you got to do. It's called being a good citizen.
Oh, well, just pull yourselves up from those bootstraps, Whoopi.
Holy, wow.
Oh, for the love of all that is
holy. They really, really hate working people.
Working people, they just want to work. If you only want to work 4 hours, that's the people busting ass, working 3 jobs and driving an Uber because they're only wanting to work 4 hours. How about companies only giving people part-time so they don't have to give them benefits? I told you this was just going to serve to make me angry.
I think Whoopi Goldberg is worth over $30 million.
I gave up on her years ago because of this stupid show, and Joy Behar, those other bimbos. Whatever. They were interestingly, the one that I thought I would find the most annoying was the least annoying, but yet they were all just whatever her name was, View Barbie, the one in the blazer, with the talking about egg freezing. Like, I don't think that you could be more clueless in the world right now than that portrayal.
I can still remember 2 or 3 years ago, or I think it was that. No, it might have been before that, when Whoopi was chastising the children who went to the late Senator Feinstein's office to tell her that, you're destroying this planet. You're making it uninhabitable for a lot of us.
I've lost respect for her so long ago.
I have been here for a long time, and I know what I'm doing. And of course, Whoopi was on the side of Dianne Feinstein.
Whoopi's had so many bad takes like the past few years. Like, I don't even that show to me is just stupid.
Remember when
R.I.P. Barbara Walters.
Remember when Joy Behar was blaming the people of East Palestine for voting for Donald Trump? That's why the train derailed. That's why Norfolk Southern's trains derailed and completely contaminated their town.
They're just so elitist. It's just so ridiculous. I cannot. Those are just not serious.
But the reason we play this clip for you guys is you need to understand that when you talk to people, especially comfortable liberals, like the people that think what Israel is doing is correct, that they're protecting themselves from Hamas, when you have people on The View who will say it's terrible what's happening to the Palestinians, but Hamas is using them as human shields, the talking points from the State Department, you have to remember that this is a big place that they're getting their information from. They get it from this show. There are millions of people, especially millions of women, who watch The View.
It's so frustrating.
And that's where they form their political opinions.
Oh, God.
That's the devastating component of that. They're trying to rationalize that it has nothing to do, and again, as I've mentioned, I'm in commercial real estate. It has nothing to do with these mega corporations that are completely unregulated.
You're just not working hard enough.
You're just not working hard enough.
Just work
not
a little
that they're
harder.
buying up every house that they could get their hands on.
How so freaking entitled. But you know what it reminds me of? That time when, I forget when it was, when Biden did that interview. It might have been, it was a while back though. It wasn't like since he's been president, but he did this interview where he was saying, you could, work a minimum wage job and just get along just fine. And as if like he has no concept that, yeah, Joe, they're still paying the same minimum wage, except for everything else has gone up. So it's, yes, back when he was a kid, you could work a minimum wage job and be just fine. That is probably true.
Probably.
But that's just not the world anymore.
Joe likes to brag when he went to the University of Delaware, he was paying $300 a semester.
And you know what? Quite honestly, when I hate doing this game, like when I was this, right? But when I went to college, which was 88, to go to the University of Florida, to go to the state school was very reasonable. It was very inexpensive. It wasn't anything people stressed out about. In fact, people went to state schools because of that. And it made sense. That was, it wasn't free. I think at one point, Florida was even closer to being free, not like California, but it was very normal price. It wasn't some absurd thing to go to a state school. So a lot of those things worked at that time.
Sure.
And they don't realize to them, it's just that, oh, these kids just aren't working hard enough. Oh, these kids are so spoiled. What's so interesting is that literally what we just watched might be 4 or 5 of the most entitled, privileged people I think could ever congregate in one table talking about how these millennials are just sort of like lazy and just are, not working hard enough. Really?
It's like going to watch.
Says the lady in the $800 pair of shoes.
And the $2,000.
I don't want to, you know what?
You have to remember, it's kind of like this comes full circle. It's like, go find the video clip that was sent to Jen by another Zionist about Deborah Messing.
Thank you for not forwarding that to me, but I don't even want to know.
And how Deborah Messing was so oppressed because she grew up in an environment where they just hated Jews and they used to poke at you. You know how many people in society have to deal with bigotry? You're not the only person.
Yeah, but they are in that capacity. Like, that's the thing about very entitled people. It's like when something happens to them, it's like, oh my God. What happened on October 7th
was terrible.
In Israel, horrible. Okay. And I get that.
But do you condemn Hamas?
But it's like, and I get that to them, it is a very 9/11 thing. That's a lot of people in proportionate to the size of their population. And I understand that that's so horrible. But what it almost is to me, it's like the equivalent of what Parkland was for a lot of the like white suburbanites. It's like, oh, now you've got my attention. Now I care about
because it came to your doorstep.
Because it came to your doorstep. And that's the kind of thing about people. Like when I see people on The View, it's like this doesn't affect them in any way. They don't really give a shit. And
they just like to punch down.
Right. But when I see things like people, about October 7th, I really feel the same way. I feel like, yes, that's horrible. Just like what happened at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas in Parkland is absolutely horrible. But yet it is a drop in the bucket in terms of the amount of deaths from guns every year, which predominantly are handguns, and I could go on and on.
And unless, of course, you feel that that the people that you're referring to are subhuman and that they do not deserve.
It's a matter of the people when you're in, like people like, I'm not mentioning names, that really take it upon themselves to get politically active when it affects them and their kids and their family and in local politics and whatever. It's like, they just come off so entitled, but it never bothered them before when it was happening to other people's children.
No.
And that's the kind of thing that I just find really kind of disgusting about all of it. It doesn't mean that one is more or less horrible. And the fact that people want to make this about teams, it's not about teams.
Well, that's what politics has become.
But they're making it, you know, there is a line in the sand that has been drawn, and it is for me. And there's no coming back from this. There's a line in the sand, and it's either you do or do not recognize that this is a genocide. Like you do or do not see that. There's certain parts of it that are very black and white. Like what your solution is can vary. But this is just anybody who is against the concept of a ceasefire or supports the idea of saying a 4-hour humanitarian pause, that is the dumbest fucking thing I've heard. Like, that is so stupid. What is that? What is that?
There'll be
They're
more,
selling that to us. Like there's actually a phrase, like the fact that that's a phrase.
There'll be many more of these unfortunate stories for us to have to deal with.
What's coming up on Monday? Because I don't know where I'm going to be. I mean, we'll see. I'm either going to be.
There's no plan. I thought you said that you can't.
Well, that's what. No, I'm asking you what if you have anything planned for Monday.
I haven't planned it yet.
I'm going to be in a situation.
Will probably just have to deal with me on Monday, so that'll be interesting. Jen, you are going to?
Well, I will be in Atlanta I'm leaving tomorrow for Stop Cop City actions. I hate when you do that. Like I'm some little kid that you're prompting to talk into a microphone. I'm going to be in Atlanta through Monday's event, which I honestly am not entirely sure what to expect. And then from there, I will be driving up to Asheville because I got to go pick up a trailer.
Well, you got to take some good footage, good road trip pictures.
But so I will, on Monday, I will either be at an event at the forest, or I will be in my car driving. That's why I cannot,
or in jail,
or potentially,
or dead,
or in well, I mean, all of those things are, I guess, somewhat possible. This is definitely not what I'm going into. I do recognize is a lot more along the lines of a Dakota pipeline situation than of a march in DC.
True,
and I do recognize that because I recognize that technically we're going to be like crossing through fencing and going where we're not supposed to be to try to stop the construction. Like I understand it. But I also think there's going to be a mass turnout to where it's not. Yeah, I think it will be.
Improve the numbers of you getting taken out, of you not getting taken out. Excuse me.
Right.
That's what I meant. Well,
but so yeah, that's what's happening. But there's a lot of events this weekend in different locations around Atlanta that are being managed by the Stop Cop City people. It's really amazing what they're doing.
Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those wonderful things.
We'll be back next Thursday afternoon.
One way or another we will, or I'll be here on Monday and you will see you then.